Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. Just doing a sound check right here. Okay. All right. Good. We can see it. All right. So last week, I apologize. I was broadcasting to a blank screen. I didn't realize that because I was using my phone for Instagram. So I couldn't tell if the stream was actually going through or not. So this is going to be a little bit of a rehash with a little bit of extra information. But right now, we are streaming live to Facebook at Dr. Nathan Thompson, Facebook at The Wellness Way Yorkville, and also on YouTube and Rumble at Dr. Nathan Thompson. So if you guys are watching me right now, thank you so much for joining me. I really, really appreciate that. And if you are watching right now and the sound is good, just say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. I know we have someone from New Hampshire. That's really awesome. Okay. So today what we're going to do is a little bit of question and answer. I want you to hold off on your questions until I say, hey, go ahead and start asking your questions. I know that I'm a little bit limited on time, but I also wanted to go over a couple of things that have come on my radar just over the last day or two. Yeah, as well, and just make sure that we're addressing it because someone will reach out and have a question about it. So I'm like, let's just answer the question sooner than later. So, guys, coming up, if you're watching from the Chicagoland area, we got an awesome event coming up. This is tomorrow, Tuesday, August 6th. This is our in-person inflammation event. All you have to do is just go to the top of our page and you'll see the Linktree profile and you'll be able to register for this in-person event at the Wellness Way Yorkville here in Yorkville, Illinois. So this is not a remote event. It's not a webinar. This is an in-person event. And the reason why is just because it's very important to be able to meet with you one-on-one and be able to meet with you at an in-person event instead of over a computer screen. So it's just a lot more personable, especially since right now we put a hold on remote consults because those were getting way filled up quite a bit. But we want to make sure that we have time for the people in our community, especially make sure that we have enough time for them as well. That's what my first responsibility is always too. So if you are from the Chicagoland area and you suffer with problems like weight loss resistance, cancer, infertility, thyroid disease, chronic joint pain, type 2 diabetes, autoimmunity, hormone issues, let's look at this from a different perspective. Biggest thing that I will tell you is no, we're not trying to cure you. The body knows how to heal as long as you are emptying out all the things that are triggering the body so that it can't overcome certain things as well. So make sure you get registered for that event. And all you have to do is if you follow up on that Linktree profile, you'll see where to register for it right here. So this will take you straight to our Eventbrite page so you can register for that in-person event. And then don't forget, we have a free resource, free home workouts with minimal equipment. So anybody literally can do that as well. If you're not from the Chicagoland area, you can find a Wellness Way doctor by going to this website, type in your zip code, and you'll find one closest to you that you can work with, either in person or also remotely as well. And then also make sure you visit our t-shirt store. Please do that. Only because we have so many awesome t-shirts. I'm going to show you one right now. That's my favorite. It's the nobody cares, work harder. Okay. Now I try to be nice. I try to be personable, things like that. I remember one of my staff members who no longer works with me, maybe for a reason, I don't know. But she said, that's kind of mean, isn't it? And I'm like, it might be, but it's the truth. Nobody cares how hard you have it. Just keep working and don't give up. So that's the biggest thing I tell people is don't you dare give up. There's so many barriers that we encounter and we think they're concrete barriers, but in fact, they're lined with Kleenex tissue and you just have to keep going, especially. So if you go to the t-shirt store, you'll see all kinds of awesome t-shirts. And I always appreciate when you order one. So make sure that you order one. And I know that we gave a lot of gift certificates for our t-shirt store going back a couple of months. If you have that gift certificate, please make sure that you use it, especially. So right now, guys, if you are watching, it'd be a good idea to start streaming some of the questions in by a live question and answer. But I want to go over a couple of things with you as before I go do some live question and answers. So if you have a question and you're watching on YouTube and you're watching it on Facebook, go ahead and you can type your question in the comments. I'll see them. I'll bring them up and do my best to answer those questions during this live broadcast. Okay. So I had a post, and this was on Facebook. This was also on Instagram as well, because I have a decent Instagram following. I don't try to, it just happens. But this was our quote unquote president. I don't know what he is actually right now, but this was him from a CNN town hall meeting saying, "You're not going to get COVID if you get these vaccinations." And I made a post and I said, it was either he either lied or incredibly incompetent. It's got to be one or the other. Has to be one. And it's amazing, amazing just some of the applause that people got, but also some of the negative commentary that I received from. And this was some of the biggest things that I saw. So I had a few people say, "Don't be political," or I had a few people say, "Unfollow," as if they need to announce their departure, like an airport. Okay. So here's the thing. This is not a political post because if you've ever noticed, I'll call out absurdity regardless of party. I think there's a lot of dumb Republicans. I think there's a lot of dumb Democrats too. And so if it's a dumb statement, I'll point it out. It doesn't matter what political party you're actually coming from, because I think that both of them think they can solve problems with a way of thinking that's not solving any of the problems. So I'll point out any absurdity regardless of party. But the reason why people had a problem with it is because I happen to point out their political God. Okay, and if that makes you upset that you are following someone who is that either corrupt or just absurd, then it's not a political post. That's just pointing out an absurdity. Okay. Now, what do I follow? I follow the Constitution. And if you are a Republican or if you're a Democrat and you are going against the Constitution, I'll have a lot of things to say because 4 years ago, there's a lot of Republicans that didn't follow the Constitution. There's also a lot of Democrats, including our governor, who called basically me a grifter for bringing a lawsuit against him and winning. And he had some problems with that. Check out who our governor is. He is an absolute terrible. It has to do with the Constitution and the ability of him not to be able to follow what the Constitution actually is. So, guys, just remember this: I don't do this for follows. I don't do this, for likes. You can follow me or you can unfollow me. Honestly, I appreciate everybody who follows me, but if you decide you're going to unfollow me, then I'm fine with that. I don't care. I believe you're cutting off your nose to spite your face because you're going to miss out on a lot of great things. But I will say this is that I'm not for everybody. And I'm actually proud of that. I don't try to be for everybody as well, because you can get into a lot of problems trying to be all things to all people. But remember this: I would rather you hate me for what I believe than and for who I am than to like me for something that I am not. So that's extremely liberating. But if you need to announce your departure like unfollowed, I'm going to tell you this: you probably suffer from the affliction of self-importance. You probably suffer from self-importance. You probably suffer from feeling more important than you really are. And that's a self-esteem issue more than anything else. So you can follow me or you can not follow me. It honestly, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, I'm not selling a detox cleanse or anything like that. I don't make any money from social media, by the way, which is why I could be so blunt and so honest. Okay. All right. Here's what's interesting. So remember, I said this: you're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations. The reason why I had such a problem with that is here's someone who is actually going against the Constitution and who basically people felt forced to get in order to keep their job, which is an affront to our liberty. Absolutely affront. But here's what's interesting, because this comes out of a journal, May 2024. So this was just about 2 months ago. Here's the title of it: a potential association between COVID-19, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm talking about, and development of Alzheimer's disease. And I think I saw that prior to this post, that post that I made a couple of weeks ago. But what's interesting is that this took a random 50% sample of city residents in South Korea, age 65 and older, and they basically sampled over 500,000 individuals. So it was not a small sample size. And here's what they found as they drew as a conclusion. And here's what they said: preliminary evidence suggests a potential link between COVID, et cetera, vaccination, particularly mRNA vaccines, and increased incidences of Alzheimer's disease and mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. This underscores the need for further research to elucidate the relationship between vaccine-induced immune responses, interesting, they said that, and neurodegenerative process, advocating for continuous monitoring and investigation into the vaccine's long-term neurological impacts. So they said, hey, we need to be looking into this a little bit more. And I love it when people say the science is settled, and they said, you're not going to get this. And they say with such boldness and authority. And meanwhile, they're looking in and they're seeing, hey, we're starting to see an uptick of certain things as a result of this as well. I love when people say when it comes to a vaccination, the science is settled, or I trust the science, guys. If you trust the science, that science doesn't require faith. So I find it interesting that they're saying, hey, we need to look into this a little bit more. That we're seeing a link, an uptick of Alzheimer's disease or mild cognitive impairment. And the thing is because it's the immune response can be causing impairment of the central nerve system. So here's my case in point right here. Here's an individual who, yes, does suffer from mild cognitive impairment. Mild is used very loosely, but also someone who's also gotten COVID 3 times and yet very certain in the science. Just like I said, it either has to be a blatant lie or it has to be blatant incompetence. It's got to be one or the other, guys. And that's one of the things. It's either a blatant lie or blatant incompetence. And if you look at our president, then you actually see of how certain he was. I'm like, you should actually have shown me the data over 10 or 15 years. And the reality is there isn't any. Okay. Now, here's some interesting data too. And I'm going to show you where you can find this. But this is what's interesting, a case report. And I looked this up again because I talk about this on our Make Immune System Strong Again. You can find that on Rumble. I'll show you here in just a second, only because Facebook and YouTube took it down within 30 minutes. Okay. They're watching me. And it's a case report, and it's called multifocal necrotizing encephalitis or brain inflammation and myocarditis after BNT 162b2 mRNA vaccine against COV, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, what this is this is the Pfizer mRNA vaccine. Okay. So you can actually, if you look this up and you read this, it's actually going to blow you out of the water that they did a case report on this, on what happened to this poor individual following that. But if you want to see this a little bit deeper, you guys can go onto the Rumble platform. Just type in the search, Dr. Nathan Thompson, Make Immune System Strong Again. You might have to search for it just a little bit, but it's about an hour and 15 minutes long, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. I did it a couple of years ago, and you're going to see everything that I talked about has basically come true, okay? And we're using research and things like that in order to back some of these things up. So, and I love how people say, oh, well, you're just a chiropractor. I'm like, that doesn't make it true or not true. That doesn't make it true or not true. And if that's your only argument, you've lost the argument, because now you have to actually attack my profession and not actually attack the information. So if you go to Rumble, you'll be able to see that whole webinar and be able to watch it all the way through. You may have to look a little bit for it, because I think I have maybe 120 videos or so uploaded onto the Rumble platform. Okay. Now, here's what's also interesting is I started to see come across my homepage of bird flu. So I just typed it in as a search term, bird flu, and look at what came up. Literally dozens of articles about the bird flu. And the thing is I've done a video on this. A lot of people got upset and angry, but I wonder why bird flu is making a comeback at this time. It always makes you wonder, if it's making a comeback, why is it at this time as well? And now how it's jumping to humans, and things like that. But if you type in bird flu, and one of the things I said is if you don't see a connection between bird flu and the time of year, exactly what it is right now, and you're truly concerned, then you probably are a special kind of stupid. Okay. So it takes a keen eye, be wise as serpents, to see some of the things that are happening right now. But if you believe the bird flu, you probably wore a mask in your car by yourself. Okay. Sorry. All right. So I'm seeing some questions that are coming in. I'll do my best in order to give my thoughts regards that from the Wellness Way approach. But I wanted to talk to you really briefly about some common health problems your doctor won't address. Now, I have a lot of people who come to me and they're like, yeah, we have these issues, but the doctor refuses to do this test. Why do they refuse to do this test? And one of the biggest things is doctors really will only do a test if they can give you a solution for it. This is why they don't test the thyroid the way that it's supposed to. They test for TSH, maybe T3, maybe T4, only because they can give you one answer, and that is to go on a thyroid replacement hormone. So why don't they address some of these issues? Is that number one, they don't have the training. And then number two, they're not trained in what is known as health restoration. They are trained in when to put you on a drug. I would actually contend that they're not trained when to take you off of a drug, because how many times have a doctor put you on a drug, clapped his hands and said, "Hey, congratulations, you don't need to be on this drug anymore." And I saw a really interesting quote when it comes to chronic illness is that medicine doesn't fix the issue with chronic illness. They just babysit it. Okay. So, what are some common health problems that your doctor won't address? And let me go over with you just a couple. Okay. And I wrote a couple of down. SIBO. Okay. Now, I have patients who come in like, I think I have SIBO. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? And they don't really have much of an understanding of what it is. So, what is SIBO? SIBO is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Okay. Now, the best way to test this is to get a stool test. So small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. When you are looking at stool testing, one of the things you got to understand is that bacteria are really opportunistic. You don't catch a bacteria in the colon unless you're running very low stomach acid and things like that, which has to do with stress, has to do with a lot of other things. But basically, what small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is that your microbiome belongs in your colon. It belongs in the colon. But if the environment changes in the intestines, which has a lot to do with the upper part of the intestines. If the upper part of the intestines is off, as far as stomach acid, gastric acid, bile acid secretion, pancreatic enzymes, and things like that, then you start to change the environment, and that bacteria can start to migrate upward into the small intestine. Okay. And there are certain drugs and medications, antibiotics, certain pain medications, things like that, that can create an environment that just makes these bacteria a better environment, makes them start to overgrow. So the problem is with this, with SIBO, is that you start to get bacteria that are growing within the small intestine. And I want you to think of this: your large intestine, where your microbiome should actually be housed, is big. And so where that happens, when people start saying, "Oh, I'm getting bloating" and things like that, well, your small intestine, you have 6 feet of them, and they're actually it has a small diameter. So if you get 2 feet of your intestines that starts to bloat or starts to have fermentation of food, start to get a lot of gas, then yeah, you're going to get a lot of bloating. Okay. So it really is all about working on changing the environment, especially. That's what basically SIBO is start changing the environment. Get some testing done, but change the environment. And the other thing too that people talk a lot about is I think I have a leaky gut. Okay. Now, there's not really any testing that's definitive for leaky gut, which is why your doctor's like, I'm not going to do it, because they can't give you a medication solution. But leaky gut really stands for like small intestinal hyperpermeability. So you have a barrier in your small intestine, and that barrier opens and closes to certain types of foods, amino acids, and things like that. And if that barrier stays open and you get poor breakdown of food from proteins into amino acid, those proteins can leak through. And if they leak through, you're going to have an immune system reaction. And that's why when we do food testing, sometimes I've seen it, people might have 10 different IgG food allergies, but I've also seen people who have really, really been wrecked. And I've seen into the 30s, and then they're having a lot of problems with a lot of gastrointestinal bloating, a lot of chronic inflammation within the gastrointestinal system. And consequently, because they're so inflamed, they also suffer extreme fatigue as well. And then you look at adrenal fatigue, which everybody thinks that they have. If they have any kind of fatigue, they think it's adrenal fatigue. And one of the things that I tell you about adrenal fatigue has to do more with chronic inflammation, infection than anything else. And I want you to think about it, okay? This will maybe start turning the gears in the right direction. So think about if you get the flu, okay? And I had a lung virus. This is about 5 or 6, weeks ago, and I was absolutely exhausted. I mean, I'm talking about sleeping 12 to 14 hours, every single day. And I didn't sit and say, maybe I have adrenal fatigue. My adrenals were down regulating. And think about any time that you're sick, you don't have a lot of energy and you just want to sleep. And people say, well, maybe I have adrenal fatigue. I'm like, your adrenals don't fatigue like that. Just if you even look at the pancreas it can fatigue, and you can develop a form of diabetes in which the pancreas can't keep up with your insulin resistance. But the adrenals they don't tank. They can very rarely, unless it's an autoimmune condition. But adrenals can down regulate, and that's why people are saying, "Oh, I'm so fatigued." I'm like, "There's something that's got to be irritating the immune system, especially." And one of the biggest things that I say, in my opinion, clinically, I've seen is that one of the things that can make people so fatigued is because they're carrying sometimes chronic low grade infection, inflammation, and a lot of it can actually be due to mycotoxins and mold, because that can really deplete the body quite a bit. And so you can test for this as well. One of the best tests that you get is actually a Dutch test, because yes, it will measure cortisol, total cortisol, how the body is turning cortisol into an inflammatory hormone known as cortisone, which is why if you have a lot of chronic conditions, doctors give you hydrocortisone, and that will improve symptoms, but it's not getting to the reason why it's happening as well. But a lot of times people throw out SIBO, leaky gut, adrenal fatigue without truly understanding exactly what it is, or even understanding why this is actually happening. So I've done a live on this. You can go back and check on Rumble, on YouTube, even on Facebook. And I've talked a lot about statins and fatigue. And if people do have a lot of fatigue, one of the things that I'll guarantee is that you're just getting beat up quite a bit. And actually, if you look at the mechanism of how statins actually work, is they block the production of CoQ10, which is how your body produces energy, or ATP, using aerobic respiration, which is why a lot of people cannot tolerate statins as well, especially if you're doing a lot of exercise and things like that. So go back and watch that video. But if the mitochondria are just getting beat up because you're so inflamed, the cells are just getting beat up, this is one of the things that actually CoQ10 can actually help with quite a bit. So this is why if you're on a statin drug, I recommend everybody should be on CoQ10, because of the very mechanism of how statin or cholesterol lowering drugs actually work. You can go to Linktree and go down to the store. This is actually our brand new formulation, and you can order it. I'm fine if you order it, but this is 150 milligrams of CoQ10. We actually had to increase it. It was just 100, and then we're like, no, we need to increase it quite a bit. So statins fatigue is a huge issue. I'd recommend, rather than running out and getting it, make sure that you actually watch that video first and foremost, okay? So let's take just a couple of questions that people might have. Nanohydroxyapatite toothpaste, what are your thoughts? I don't really have any thoughts on that, but I will actually say this, is that I don't use any fluoride. Neither do my kids and things like that. I think when you're talking about oral health, most important thing is that you're not eating things that are feeding the bacteria to produce an acid that erodes the tooth enamel. And that's why we just use a toothpaste that is like SLS, sodium lauryl sulfate free, fluoride free, things like that. And what's interesting is that, in order to build the teeth, biggest thing I tell people is don't eat foods that's causing the teeth to erode. I think that's one of the most important things. Okay. All right. So Dennis, you ask a lot of great questions. Thank you. Dr. Dadis Karazan said that if we're healthy, the only thing that should happen after eating is that our hunger goes away. We shouldn't feel tired or energetic. Do you agree? I think I agree to a certain point. Okay. Now, if people are carrying a lot of inflammatory, like food allergies or things like that, or they have some big time insulin resistance and blood sugar issues, then after they eat, they might feel tired, bloated, lethargic, fatigued, things like that. And so that just means that you got to look deeper if that you're feeling very tired and fatigued after you eat. Okay. Um, but this is why a lot of people will say, "Oh, the wellness way is hard." I had two people tell me today, I'm like, I agree, it is hard. Choose your hard. Life is always going to be hard, but you just need to choose your hard. Okay. All right. Paula asked this question: what caused the body to develop Hashimoto's? What is happening in the cell? Well, the first thing that I would say is that if you see the presence of thyroglobulin antibody or thyroid peroxidase antibody, you see the development of that and you're seeing antibody levels, then the first thing you have to think of is, I'm having an immune response to my thyroid. Okay. And you may think, My body's attacking itself. And just remember, your immune system is biologically programmed not to attack itself. Okay, it just means that the thyroid is getting injured. So, what's happening in the cell is that the cell is getting injured, is putting up a flag and says, "Hey, I'm sick. You need to get rid of me." And then the immune system is just doing the job that it was programmed to do. This is why I think selenium is very important. If someone's got climbing thyroid antibodies and stuff, selenium is very important. But you also need to calm down that immune response. Check your vitamin D levels. You need to know what your antibody levels are. And I've seen them go up and down. I've seen people massively go down once they remove big triggers, i.e., like breast implants. I've seen them go way down after that. But then also, I've seen them also jump up, especially in the presence of mold mycotoxins as well. So this is this it's a lot more complicated than I think a lot of people give it its due. But this is why it's an immune system issue. It's not really even a thyroid issue. Yes, the thyroid's affected, but this is really an immune system more than anything else. This is why getting the proper testing is the most important thing that you can do. Amy, it's good to see you from Iowa. Hope you're doing well in Iowa. Kim, it's always great to see you. I see you come along the page. Blessings to you as well. Thank you so much. April asked the question, your thoughts on yearly mammograms and a better alternative. All right. So I've caught some flack from certain doctors who think that mammography is the best thing in the world. I'm like, if you have an abnormal mammogram, they're still going to do either an ultrasound or they're going to do some kind of MRI on it as well. So do I think there's a better alternative to mammograms? Yes, I do personally. And I would actually say thermography. We're going to be having thermography in our office next month. Make sure you look up Chicagoland thermography and think of this. Even thermography says this is not diagnostic for breast cancer or things like that, but it will start to pick up some heat changes that's starting to take place. Because remember, you'll start to see some inflammatory changes, and it's measuring some of those inflammatory changes that are taking place as well. So how can we reverse SIBO if your doc won't do these tests? Please work with a Wellness Way doctor. Please go to our page, find a Wellness Way doctor. Either you work with in person if you're close enough, or they can reach out and work remotely with you as well. So I don't know how to necessarily reverse SIBO because I don't know if you have it that's going on. So that's why probably need to check your foods. Also need to check your stool test. And a lot of times you'll see an overabundance or overgrowth of a lot of different bacteria as well. Just remember, you didn't catch it. It's just bacteria grows in an environment that's good for it. Okay. It's kind of like weeds. You'll notice that what weeds grow, the weeds will grow in the environment that it prefers, which sometimes it can be in a crack in a sidewalk, not a lot of water. Um, but a lot of times we think that we need to kill it off, and sometimes to do it quicker, yeah, you might need to do that. But work with a Wellness Way doctor. Work with a Wellness Way doctor to make sure that they're getting the right testing and you're going in the right direction. Okay, but that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. I'm taking Coumadin for a mechanical aortic valve. What impact is it having? Is there a healthier option? Dr. McCullough once addressed a warfarin substitute. Carlton, thank you for that question. I'm not a medical doctor, so it's very tough for me to be able to answer that question. But basically, I'm guessing is that you're taking Coumadin because it's preventing um, the blood from clotting, and they don't want any clotting around that valve, especially. I would say ask your doctor. The reason why they probably have you on it is because that's just the protocol. Um, so you'll have to actually ask them as well. Okay. Renee asked the question, what causes polyps in the stomach along with an enlarged spleen? If you got polyps in the stomach, there's a lot of irritation in the stomach. That's why people say, I got polyps in my large intestine. I'm like, something's irritating it. Polyps are a response to irritation. And if you have an enlarged spleen, then you might be carrying some kind of infection. So I probably would look at either a stool test and look at a viral panel as well and see why your spleen is enlarged. If you look at people and they have mononucleosis, they don't have them go into any kind of contact sports because they can suffer with an enlarged spleen and that's due to the viral infection. Okay. Uh, Kimberly Burns, greetings from near Buffalo. I am sounding a little bit better. My voice gets a little bit stronger every single day. A lot of people don't realize I had lost my voice for 3 weeks. Oh gosh, it was one of the hardest things I ever had to go through. So I appreciate your thoughts and prayers. I really do. Okay. All right. Jackie, it's so good to see you. Thank you for stopping by. Jackie's a wonderful soul and a kind soul, nonetheless. I hope you're doing good. So, I'm 62 years old. My MD wants a bone density scan. Do I really need one? Um, I would say this. I don't have any problems with people getting a bone density scan, like a DEXA scan or something like that. But people say, what can I do in order to improve my bone density? And the first thing that I would say is make sure that you're eating enough protein, check your vitamin D levels. Please make sure you're doing that. Please make sure that you're not running low in stomach acid so you can't absorb some of those things. And if you do have decreased bone density, then start working on it, please. This is why doing weightlifting exercise is beneficial. I know I tell people, hey, do some weightlifting. And it's so hard for them to get in the gym and start to do weightlifting because you need to have someone who knows what they're talking about and how to teach you good form, good techniques so you don't end up getting injured or hurt. But I would be checking your bone density. And this is specifically true, especially if you went into early menopause, either surgically or also if you just happen to be in menopause for a long period of time, because those decreased circulating estrogens that can that can uh, that can cause a lot of issues. I've seen doctors put a woman into menopause early at a very young age. She immediately started having a lot of bone density issues and fractures of the spine and things like that. Okay, so it's it's different for everyone, but I think it's important to know what your bone density is so that you can come up with a plan of attack and say, here's how I'm going to address this as well. Most common areas that you can get a fracture are going to be in the spine, are going to be in the upper neck of the humerus, of the femur, of the hip. Those are the most common areas. So spine, think the humerus, and then think the femur. Those are the most common areas as well. So this is why walking isn't necessarily the best thing to do. You need to be doing weightlifting, and you need to stress the bones more than what they're used to so that they can undergo constant remodeling in order to be stronger as well. It's also why you need enough protein, vitamin D, all those things, but it's multifactorial, guys. That's why even going on a Vibe plate can help as well in order to improve bone density. But you just need to know where you're starting from. Please make sure you know where you're starting from. Okay. All right. If there are any other questions, guys, put it in the comments. Please make sure you do it because I'm going to give you a final thought. Okay. And I think that this is very true as well, because just talking to people all the time, and it's this. Everybody talks about everyone needs healthcare. No, we don't need more healthcare. What we need is better health. What we need doctors to do is to teach people about lifestyle. What we need doctors to do is to give them more than 5 minutes or roll their eyes when they're not feeling very well or just babysit their chronic illness. Because if you want to be frustrated with healthcare, present with an illness that doesn't follow your doctor's algorithms. Okay. And the reason why I say algorithms is because a lot of what doctors do is they're not looking at the whole Swiss watch principle. Basically, what they're looking at is they're just looking at if it's this, then do this. If it's this, then do this. And if you don't follow that algorithm, then they can't help you. And you're just going to be so frustrated when it comes um, so frustrated when it comes to healthcare as well. Okay. All right. How can a person treat microalbuminuria other than ACE blood pressure pills? Okay. I'd have to look at your test. Okay. But um, if you are getting a lot of albumin in your urine, then one of the things we'll always would look for is the potential for mold. Okay. Here's what's so interesting about mold, guys, is that when it comes to mold is like something that's silent that very few people look at. And it's like, and I very rarely get it right. And this is why I always tell people, if you expect me to get it perfect and right, then apply that same standard to your medical doctor, because some of you have been hanging around getting testing for 20 years and they haven't figured out what the issue is. But a lot of people don't want to give me 20 years. So, um, that's why, you'll look for some signs that, hey, there might be an issue with, with mold, anything that involves albumin, because mold will affect your albumin levels. Mold will affect your kidneys. Mold can affect, carry a lot of gastrointestinal infection, especially once it gets worse and worse. Um, but it can be one of those things, and the only way to know or not is to test for it in the body, number one, and then test for it in your environment to see if you're carrying it in the house. Okay. All right. So, Kim Burns asked the question: can you adjust someone with scoliosis? The answer is yes, you can. However, I wouldn't recommend you go to any chiropractor when it comes to scoliosis, because yes, some people, they'll adjust the scoliosis and they can absolutely make it worse. And this is why you need to find someone who is clear, usually clear certified, or has a good understanding of the mechanism of scoliosis. One of the biggest mechanisms of scoliosis has to do with tension in the spinal cord. And if you notice, usually people with scoliosis have lost their lateral curves, or curves from the side, curves in the neck, curves in the lower part of the back. Remember, the spinal cord is attached and it's tethered to the actual spine. It's attached at the foramen magnum, or right as it exits through the very top part of the skull, also tethered down at T12. And so if you lose any kind of curves, the interesting thing is that as a person's growing, the body and its wonderful amount of wisdom that it has will put curves in other areas in order to take tension off of the spinal cord. So that's why you need to make sure someone knows what they're doing. But yeah, you can adjust someone with that, but um, but you just have to make sure um, that the person doing it has some kind of working knowledge of curves and things like that, because just randomly adjusting and just doing that, you can actually make it worse. And that's why I recommend, if you are, if that person does in fact have scoliosis, we need to know what age they are to make sure, because if they're growing, it can get worse very quickly. But she needs x-rays. So your friend needs x-rays in order to see exactly what's going on. And the other thing too is that if someone's not from the area, we'll try to find someone who is clear certified. I just found someone who I work with remotely in the Texas area, because they have probably the best knowledge of how to work with it non-surgically as well. And you'll actually find that surgical when they try to do surgery on a scoliosis, it's usually not a very good outcome with it. Okay. But if she's gone to chiropractor to paralyze her, if they did anything to her back, I'm guessing you're probably going to someone who's not very certain or knowledgeable in scoliosis. So you need to make sure that you get another opinion in regards to that, especially because they'll measure and they'll see what percent, like what the degree of scoliosis is. If it's under 25 degrees, then that's very encouraging. If it gets to 35, then you're almost clear institute only. And if it gets over 35, then you really, really got to be careful with it. I mean, you probably need to do a lot of work with a clear certified doctor to make sure, because they have a lot of the equipment and stuff in order to help start to calm it down and start to reverse it as well. Okay. So final thought: if you want to be frustrated with healthcare, present with an illness that doesn't fit your doctor's algorithms. Okay. So in our Wellness Way clinics, guys, the biggest thing I will tell you is this: we think and act differently to solve the health challenges that others can't. So if you have a health problem and you're not getting resolution, then you just have to look at it from a different perspective. Okay. And I will say this: you can't solve your problems with the same level of thinking that created the problem. And if you have a problem with your health, then the biggest thing that I will say is you need to change your mind. This is why if someone comes in and they have type 2 diabetes, then you can't fix the problem with the same level of thinking that created the problem in the first place. That's why I tell people you have to start changing this, because if you don't change this, then all you're doing is pushing a boulder uphill. And this is why when people say, oh, it's so hard, I'm like, change the way you think. And that's your first step um, in order to work on getting it back. Okay. But you can't solve your problems with the same level of thinking that created the problem. And this is why when people come with health issues, I tell people you're not just one teaspoon away of turmeric for ultimate health. Okay, you're not a special herb away from ultimate health, which people think, oh, maybe I'm just missing a supplement. They come in and they're on 32 supplements and not getting better. You have to start looking at it from a different perspective because you can't solve your problems with the same level of thinking that created it in the first place. And this is why, if you want to change your thinking and get registered for our next event, which is our inflammation talk, that's tomorrow, August 6th at 6 o'clock p.m. This is an in-person event. Go to the link tree if you're from the Chicagoland area. You want to work with us directly. And you're talking about anything with weight loss, resistance, cancer, and we don't treat cancer, by the way, infertility, thyroid disease, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune condition, hormone issues. Guys, the way that you start working on those is start building health and understand that it's physical, mental, chemical stressors that are going on that doesn't allow the body to be able to think the way that it's supposed to. Okay. So you have to start looking at it. But guys, get registered for it. Just go to our Linktree profile. You'll find our Eventbrite page. You can get registered for it. Please go there. And I know that we're pretty full for tomorrow. So if you can't register, just wait for the next one. But get registered as quickly as possible because we have a special gift for you at that event as well. Okay. One last question. Where can I get a copy of the Wellness Way book? Referring to the book that is on the side table at your clinic. Okay. So I'm unsure as far as which one that it is, but you can find them on, I'll type it in for you, and maybe you'll be able to see it. Store.the. I'll type it into the host chat. Hopefully this will link directly. All right. So see if you can go to the Wellness Way store. You'll probably see that book. You'll be able to see that book on there. And I don't know which one it is because I know there's a detox book. I know that there is a non-inflammatory diet book as well, but you'll be able to find it there. We also carry it in the office too, most likely. Okay. So you'll be able to find that right there. All right. One last question, guys. Can chiropractic care and massage do anything for varicose veins or hemorrhoids? If you're suffering with issues with varicose veins or hemorrhoids and things like that, there are certain procedures and maneuvers that can help. But one of the things I would probably say is if you get a problem with varicose veins, there probably is a problem with the quality of your veins. And if you go back and search the videos, there's actually something that we recommend the Wellness Way that you can be taking in order to help strengthen your veins. But if you're having a problem with hemorrhoids as well, I would say check a stool test and see, because there's a lot of things that can be happening chemically. So, when people say, "Oh, can chiropractic care help with pregnancy?" I'm like, well, if it's a huge stress issue, then yeah, I've had people who have had amazing recoveries, and there's also people who didn't get pregnant as well. And that's why you have to look at all the different things that are stressing the body out. You got to look at physical, mental, chemical, physical, mental, chemical. But when people say, who should get adjusted? I answered this question last week, but it didn't show up on our live video. I actually think everyone can benefit from a highly skilled chiropractic adjustment. Get some x-rays. Everyone needs a different amount of care. That's just based on what you see going on your x-rays and things like that. But I want you to think of this. Most people don't take care of their spines. Most people take terrible care of their spines. And this is why if you never brush your teeth, you never flossed, and you just basically ate like an a-hole, nothing but sugars, refined sugars, grains, things like that. If you're 30 years old, I would be surprised if you even had your teeth at that point. And I wouldn't say at that point, oh, well, everyone's supposed to lose their teeth. I'm like, yeah, you'll lose your teeth if you're not taking care of them. But you also need to make a very physical effort, a very conscious effort to be taking care of your spine and be taking care of your nerve system. That's why we recommend, based off of x-rays, specific things to do at home. That's why we have specific things that we do in office, and you'll understand it's highly personalized based on the individual. It's not some kind of cookie cutter, and everybody wants a cookie cutter. Even a lot of doctors, they want a protocol, they want cookie cutter, but that just doesn't cut it anymore. So when people say, I'm doing your protocol, I'm like, that's not a protocol. That's what I've recommended for you. That's what's missing in healthcare is an individualized approach based off of testing, which is what we do, which is why, guys, get registered for the inflammation event coming up Tuesday, August 6th, 6 o'clock p.m. If you're from the Chicagoland area and you also want to work with us directly, that's your in to be able to get through the door. We're not doing it as a punishment. We're doing this to help you start thinking differently and to start to look at different solutions. Because remember, you can't solve your problems with the same level of thinking that created the problem in the first place. And you can go ahead and get registered for it if you click our Linktree profile right here for the inflammation event. You can also see your free workout ebook using minimal equipment. Make sure you download that. That's a gift from me to you. You can find the link to find a Wellness Way doctor as well. And then also, you should be able to find the Wellness Way store possibly on this as well if you need to order one of those books like the non-inflammatory diet or things like that. And then also if you want to order a t-shirt, which I would recommend, because if you go on there, you'll be able to see a lot of t-shirts that will make you probably laugh or chuckle tongue in cheek a little bit, like mandate burpees or Stockholm syndrome. Or I think you'll find one that says, let's go, Brandon. But you'll be able to find it on there and be able to order it. You order it, get the size that you need, the t-shirt that you want. They'll ship it directly to your house within a couple of weeks, just for you. So make sure that you do that as well, and check out the store, check out some of those free downloads as well. So thank you guys very much for asking your questions. Thank you for watching. I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you guys very much. And I'm happy that it actually went through this time. I've had some problems with our streaming software and with our platform, but it looks like it went through this time. So I'm always happy. I'm always honored. I'm always humbled when you sit here and you watch. So thank you guys very much for doing that. Next week, I'll probably try to come with a new topic. Give me some ideas, in regards to that. Keep asking your questions too, because that gives me ideas for live videos and things like that for the future. So I appreciate all of you. I love all of you. Like I always say, you can follow me if you want, or if you don't, that's okay too. Just don't announce your departure. All right. Oh, you don't need to suffer from self-importance, especially. So I always appreciate all the people who follow, but if you don't want to, then that's fine as well. So I'm not doing this for likes or follows. My self-esteem is high enough. All right. So guys, I hope you have a great rest of your night. I hope you have a great rest of your week. Remember, as I always say, remember who you are, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully we'll see you guys at the Inflammation Talk tomorrow night. Be well.